folks, Dave Brennan here. Today I'm going over the bulletproofing for the Williams System 7 MPU and driver board that I pulled out of SolarFire. So there are several things that you can do to bulletproof this. I'm actually going off of a guide from Pinside. The guy's name is Vid on there, and if you just search for Williams bulletproofing, the thing is Vid's Guide, so VID, Vid's Guide to Bulletproofing Williams System 3 through 7, and he goes through a lot of good tips on what to do for this. So I'll kind of summarize as I'm doing this, and so let me zoom in here and I can show you a little bit closer. So we're looking at the MPU board, and so some of the things that I'm going to accomplish are removing the battery pack. You have the positive on one side and negative on the other. There are a few things that you can do as an alternative to batteries. One, you can just make it an off-board battery pack, and so essentially you would take just a cheap battery pack that you can get. I think I got these on eBay, but essentially you just have wire leads and you connect. In this case, it's going to be on either corner. So the way to tell is this negative is connected to the ground plane. So you want to take it from this one, and then this positive goes up and is connected to the rest of the board. These other two are not. So you want these two in the corners. Then the other thing you can do is super cap. So this is a 1UF 5.5 volt, and it's a capacitor. The difference with this is it doesn't hold a charge for forever. This would be if you run your games, at least once a month or every couple weeks. This is a good option because this can also discharge, and so you might have to go in and change your settings and that. So, but if you turn your games on regularly, this is a good option. So what I'd have to do with this is just kind of mount it in the middle and have kind of wire leads that face. Oops, that's goes this way. So it's marked on there negative and positive. So I kind of cross it, so I'd still remove this either way. The point is you got to get away from alkaline batteries. So if you do forget to change them, which everybody does, at least when it's off board, it's going to leak on the side or in this battery pack, and you can just cut this off and change it, and then this will never leak. So there are some other options with like NVRAM, which would plug into wherever the 5101 is. I forget. It is somewhere in here. But I'm not going to do that because it requires a special adapter board and NVRAM chips, and those are not available at the moment, so it's kind of a moot point. Another thing to look at that he points out in the guide is your socket chips, and he points out that like the earlier System 3 Williams used these like really crappy Scan-B sockets, and so basically the rule is if you can easily grab a hold of the chips and pull them out with your fingers, it's not they're not good. Luckily, I think with this is a Solar Fire is a later run. I think it's System 7. So these appear to be fine. I'm not gonna go through that and replace them if I don't have to, because it is a lot of work. But there is a way to do it, and he shows on there. So you can take the chip out, you can actually pry up the socket, and then it leaves behind the metal pins. Then you can just pluck out, you heat up and pluck out each one of the pins from the socket, and that's a safer way of doing it. I think I've done that once before on another video, but anyway, so another thing on MPU and driver board are the connectors. So back up here a little bit. Okay, so as I showed before, there's an interconnect connector that connects together both the MPU and driver board, and it connects up, plugs in like this, right? Well, as I mentioned before, these male pins are a longer pin than what you could normally get for header pins. So I happen to have a bunch of these where you can replace, I could replace them, but the standard size, these are SIP 0.156 header pins. But the problem with it is, if I put them flush to the board, you can see, kind of see, that they are not the same height. And so what you're going to do is, it's going to end up being a little bit too short when you try to plug this in. So these longer header pins, I believe that Great Plains Electronics has them or had them available, but I typically don't. If they're not corroded from acid damage, which there's no evidence that happened on these boards here, so I'm not going to bother replacing them. What I will do though, and this should be for all of your header pins, is to reflow solder on every one of them, because what can happen is you'll get cold and cracked solder joints, and when these pins, when they pivot or when they flex, it'll lose connection, and it can cause all kinds of problems with resets, so or the game freezing up. So make sure that when you're doing your MPU and your coil driver board, you'll want to go through and reflow solder on every single one of these header pins to make sure that you don't have any cracked solder joints. So one thing I will do on the driver board side is I'm going to replace the female connectors, and the reason for that, let's see here. The reason for that is you can see, like, this one got a bit burnt, and it, you know, if it's dirty and it's not white and shiny, like let me show you a brand new one here. Oh yeah, Big Daddy Electronics also carries these connector kits. This is something I bought a while ago. Or Big Daddy Enterprises, I believe. Anyway, if it's not white and shiny like this, or whatever bright color, then it's the original, and you're going to save yourself a lot of headache just by replacing these, because over time these pins that have tension lose that tension. If you can see it a little closer here, maybe they lose that spring tension on the pins, and so therefore it loses connection. So those two things, cracked solder joints on the male side, and then not enough tension on the female side. So replace these, reflow solder there. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do for these, for the MPU. So let me set this off to the side. And then for the driver board, a few things that need to be done. Like I said, reflowing the header pins on all of it. I just ordered stuff for these resistors on this side. It's R like 150 to something, 58 or something. This whole line always gets burnt up. Some are crispier than others, and what can happen is it will get so burnt up that it burns the traces underneath here. And so there are two things that you can do. You can replace these with a 5 watt 27 ohm resistor that handles the wattage better, or you can completely remove these and replace them with jumpers, and then you need to replace these TIP 42s with IRF 9Z34N, and you put them in the same location. So I priced it out and it's about equivalent. So for 8 resistors versus 8 transistors, either way you'll have to buy 8, and so far it looks like it was just easiest for me to get them off eBay, but it might take a while for them to ship from China or whoever you get them from. So those need to be replaced. Another thing that is a good idea, and it looks like the previous person that worked on it, you can see that there's a chip socket here and here. This whole section is for your switches, the send and receive signals. So I forget which one. One is your switch rows and one is columns. And I can see that they did a little bit of solder work here because these chips were replaced. This one, and this one. So they're chasing down some kind of switch issue. But when we were playtesting the game, I didn't see any of that. So it's working. But one thing that they didn't do is, see how there's jumper. So anything, it looks like a resistor, but it's actually a jumper. This is if you have a single black line going through the resistor, that's actually just a jumper. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out all of these resistors here in this line and replace them with jumpers. So what that will do is it makes your switches more responsive. It has to do with the amount of delay that, or that the, basically, so the MPU can read a switch closure, so it like cuts down on that delay. So yeah, that's what I'm kind of looking at. There's really, other than that, I'll probably replace this capacitor because that's an electrolytic. So that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna go ahead and start working on that stuff, starting with the MPU, and go from there. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is cut out this onboard battery pack, and easiest way is to just do, this is a pair of Hakko flush cut snips. Get these off of eBay, or not eBay, Amazon. They're pretty cheap. So it's easiest to just cut the leads, and then I can desolder and pull out those pieces. that's all there is to that. Chuck it. So for this one, I'm actually going to use a super cap. I like these. I use these on Valley boards. I've used them on Zachariah boards. So you're going to get 5.5 volts out of it, and just make sure that you have the polarity right. It's just like any other capacitor. It's pointing, arrows are always pointing to the negative side of the capacitor. So in this case, I'm gonna put some wire leads to it and connect the two. So I happen to have some color-coded wire here. I'll just cut a little piece for each side here. Alright, so I'm just going to solder this on quick. It's always a good idea to add a little bit of solder to the ends, and then I find it easier for them to stick when I kind of put the two together. So if I can just kind of hold this, there's one, to the negative side, two. Alright, I can kind of just place it on the board here. Kind of bend these feet. I'm going to cut it to size. So where my snips go? Right about here. And here. I can strip the ends. So again, I get these at Tata Electronics. I get a lot of stuff from them. Okay. So can bend this down, bend that down. Add a little bit of solder to the spot on both the wire and the board. It's easier so I can just touch the two and it's done. Go over here. So this is connected to the ground plane, so it needs a bit of heat. Alright, that's pretty much it. So nice and inexpensive. Alright, so let's see, what else do I need to look at? I should probably replace this one capacitor. This is a 10 microfarad or 100 microfarad 10 volt. I can test it quick, see what it's at. In all likelihood, it's probably fine. Oh, well, at this, let me see. I'll have to see if I can find. I'm sure I have a 100 microfarad. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Alright, this will be perfect. This is got a light reflection. 100 UF 50 volt. So as long as the UF is the same, you can go higher in voltage. So easiest way to pull these out is I just like to heat up the solder pad and then grab a hold of it and pull it out. Pull out one of the leads, one lead at a time. Sometimes it helps to add a little bit of fresh solder to the solder pad before doing so. This is the negative side, so it takes a little bit of heat to pull it out. Heat the back side. Another good tool is to have a little dental pick. You can grab the component on the one side and kind of give it some pressure while I heat up the back side. What's going on here? He's not wanting to cooperate. Finally. So that took a while because it's in the ground plane. So hopefully I can solder suck this out quick. I'm trying to do this fast so I can, while it's still heated up. Well, got most of it. Alright, same kind of thing on the positive side. This one should be easier because it's not, the ground plane is like a big heat sink, so it makes it more difficult to pull it out. This one I should just be able to pull out with my fingers. Okay, I got it. And clear out the hole. Alright, again, so 100 UF 50 volt is replacing the 100 UF 10 volt. So I can connect these leads to my tester just to show you the difference. There we go. So it's just about at 100 UF, and it's got about half an ohm of resistance. So that's good. Then it's marked on here, so always the negative is the shorter lead of the capacitor, and it's typically marked with a stripe on that side. So since that negative was being a bit difficult, I'm actually going to heat up this spot for the negative. I'm going to put some fresh solder on there, get it good and hot, and then I can poke it through, because I did not clear out the solder hole all the way. Goes. Okay. The positive I need to clear out better. It did not get cleared out. There we go. Not as pretty as I'd like it to be, but it does the job. Okay, so I just need to solder on that positive side, and then I'm all set. And you just snip off the excess leads, and that's good to go. Alright, so the other thing I talked about was reflowing the header pins, but I can see on this that previous owner has done some of that, but they did leave some of the flux left over, and so it's been on there for a while, so it might take some scrubbing. But yeah, it looks like all of these are in pretty good shape. I might reflow a couple on this long 40-pin connector here, but then I'll show you how to clean off the solder flux. You should always clean off the solder flux, because it can be a conductor, and if you're bridging two pins, you could actually cause some problems if that flux is conductive across it. So really, it's just clean it off with a toothbrush and some alcohol and get it scrubbed good and wipe it off so it looks nice and professional. Let me do a close inspection of this. Make sure you didn't miss anything. Okay. So, 91% isopropyl alcohol and a toothbrush. Gives you a reason to get a new toothbrush, change it out. See one solder pad that is too close to the other. Take care of that now. Don't need these tails to be getting close to the other ones. Okay. That looks pretty nice. So the whole idea here is you want to make sure that it doesn't have anything bridged. So you put your multimeter on continuity, the diode test, and if you're unsure of your soldering job, so this one here, oh, this is connected up. I think that is supposed to be connected. These two confirm on this other side. Yeah. So that's part of the ground plane here. So that's why that's showing connectivity for those two pins. So just make sure you know that they're supposed to be connected. Anyway, you move along, touching each pin, confirming that you have no pins that are bridged. And this is always a good idea if you're, especially if you're doing some like 0.1 pins that are closer together, or like on this side. It's fairly easy to do that, and you can end up causing more problems than you're helping if you bridge pins together that aren't supposed to be bridged. And then the last two are ground. Okay, so I'm going to go through, I'm not going to show it all on camera here, but you know, these need to be cleaned up with a little bit of alcohol and the toothbrush. Same thing on this side here, so I'll scrub all of that, and then as far as I'm concerned, the MPU, I'm not going to mess with it. Like I said, chip sockets are one, but these look to be okay, so I'm not going to pull those out. Alright, on to the coil driver board. As I said, I'm going to replace the female 40-pin header at the top. I'm going to replace these resistors here with jumper resistors, or they're not resistors at all, they're jumpers, to make the switches more responsive. I am still waiting on, I'm going to wait on components to replace this hot resistor section here, and I might as well replace this capacitor as well, because when I do the test on it, it says that it's leaky, and I have brand new ones sitting right here. So it might be okay. It's sitting at 118 UF, so it could be fine, but I have them, so I'll replace it. Doesn't take that much time. So you already saw me do that, so I'm not going to pull out another transistor and show you. I will, however, pull out these resistors and show you that. So again, take your dental tool. You can get these at Harbor Freight in a pack. Get a bunch of them, and the point being that you put the hook on one of the legs of the resistor and just kind of get it underneath there a little bit, and then from the other side you heat it up, and you can kind of pull out each one of these as you go. So I will start doing that. It's easier to have backing up a little bit. It is anyway. Okay. You don't pull too hard. It should be go in and just hold on to the resistor with fingers, and when you heat up, it should pull out real easily. You do not want to pull out the cord. There's a cord that goes to the solder pad. And these things come out pretty easily once you heat up. Alright, so got each one of them pulled up. So now all I have to do is heat up the other side and pluck them out. Alright, now I need to clear out the solder holes, so I'm going to add some fresh solder to the back side of the board. You want to heat it up enough that it goes through the solder hole and through the front side of the board. That way when I go to suck out the solder, it's going to pull from one side to the other. Right. Now from the front side of the board, I'm going to put these, they're jumpers, but if you want to get fancy, I mean, technically I could just use a wire and go across, but these are called 0 ohm resistors, and again, you can get them from Tata Electronics, and they have just a black line going across, but alright, this handy tool that I have here is for bending wire leads to make it look prettier. You do not need to have this, but it does make them look a little bit nicer. What you do is, it's got kind of this gauge here, and really just pick the best kind of number where you want it to be, and you bend it around. So I'm somewhere in the I'll put it on 15. Set your component on the gauge, and then kind of center it up, and you bend it around, and then the legs are bent at a 90-degree angle, and then I'll put it into the board. So I should have done a little bit less. I need it to be maybe a couple positions up. So that's if you want to get fancy with it. Bend it around. There. Looks a little nicer. Kind of more like the factory, I guess. So, and then, I mean, you can do them one at a time, or you can do, insert all of them at once. And if you do them all at once, you'll have to like hold it from the one side. Kind of hold it from the one side and solder. So one trick with that, if you were to do, if you were to put them all in there, one trick is to just insert them. Like sometimes I'll have to put like, my pliers or something on the back side, poke everything through, and then you can take a piece of tape and lay it across to hold everything in place, and then you can flip it over and solder it. So I'm going to go ahead and bend all of these quick and insert them into the board, and then solder them up. Alright, so now I push them down. Not perfect, but pretty good. So get them lined up a little better. And just take a piece of tape, lay it over the top of them. Just to hold them in place for a second. Flip it over. Alright, last step. A bit of alcohol and toothbrush. There we go. Looks nice and neat. Alright. Back up a little bit. Clear my workstation. Okay, now I'm on to this 40 pin connector here, and I wonder, see, this is kind of loose, but anyway, I think I'm gonna add some fresh solder and do one, because they're in sections of, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 pins. So I want to try to get these out fairly easily, I hope. Okay. We're going to do this on the side, an angle here. I find it a little bit easier. So I got to that part, and so I'm just going to wiggle it back and forth. And there we go. Hold it out. Alright, and then you check, make sure that you have the holes cleared out. Looks like I do. And then toss this. And get the new pieces. Oh, so it looks like these are longer. It's not the same number of pins. So I'm going to have to pull out some more connectors and keep going. So anyway, you kind of get the idea. Pull these out, and then I'm going to replace them. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that. And I will stop talking and you can just watch it in fast mode here. Alright, I finally got it. So, as you probably saw, it's a bit of a struggle sometimes. I mean, you're desoldering quite a few header pins on this, and it's old solder, so it can put up a fight. So you got to make sure that those holes are good and cleaned out. The two ends have 2 pins that are connected to the ground plane, and so that takes a heck of a lot more heat. So as you might have noticed, I would add some fresh solder to it, get it nice and hot, and then immediately right away go and suck the solder out as quick as you can. And then sometimes you might even have to flip the board over and do it from the other side because it's just not driving enough heat into those two pins. So anyway, finally got it. So just line up the new ones, and it's good if you can try to get them even. But so what I'll do is from this back side, again, you could probably run a piece of tape along the side here, but I might just hold each one individually and solder it, or if you can kind of, yeah, let's see, how do I want to do this? Yeah, you can just wrap a piece of tape around the edge here. You really just need to solder like 2 pins, and then it'll hold it in place. You can just do that for all of them. Just get a couple of pins soldered in, and then if I need to, I can just heat up those couple of pins and maneuver around the connector a little bit better if I need to position it. Alright, so they're in there. So what I'm going to do as I solder this, so like this one, see how it's a bit wiggly? So I can push and hold it as I heat back up those pins that I soldered. Get it nice and tight to the board. Let it cool, and then you can let go. See, it's a little better now. It'll firm up more once I get the rest of them soldered. Alright, now it's just a matter of soldering all the rest of the pins. Okay, so again, you can take your multimeter, put it on a continuity test, and then check your pins. So again, the last two are ground plane, so they're supposed to be connected, and just move your connector along, or your leads along. Make sure that you don't have any bridged. Alright, so that job is done. Let me back up here. Looks like there. So that should be good for quite a few more years. So at that point, I think I'm going to end the video here. I will go through, and I can see that the previous owner I can see the previous owner had reflown some solder on most of the header pins here, but again did not clean up the flux. So I'm going to go through and double check that all of these are good and reflow ones that they might have missed or neglected, and then clean those up. And then we did find out this connector in the previous earlier video where we had some wire ties on it, so I marked them, but did discover looking at the manual that it is supposed to be, I think it was orange and gray and orange and purple are supposed to be on this connector, even though the rest of the orange with color stripes are on this top connector here. So it is correct. I think the reason that they did that is because they didn't have the proper tools to repin the connector and fix it. So that's why they did this hack. So when I go to put the board back in, I will fix it. So other than that, once I get the parts in, I will replace this section here so it runs cooler, and that's pretty much it. Alright, well, fast forward to, I do now have the parts. I ended up ordering them off eBay, so I'm going to replace this section here for these resistors that just get really hot and they cook the board. I'm going to do a Mosfet mod using IRF 9Z34N transistors to replace these TIP42 transistors here, and then I'm going to place a jumper in place of these resistors. So really all I need to do is I need to remove every one of these and then just start replacing stuff. So first thing I'll do is just kind of add a little bit of solder to each thing and just start plucking these out. Alright, I wanted to show a little trick that I learned for clearing out solder holes, and hopefully it works, otherwise I can cut it out of the video, but essentially the technique is to add some solder to it and then tap the board on the soldering desk. So you just kind of heat it up and then you drop it, and it doesn't always clear it out all the way, but you might be able to see that it's a good way of getting some of the, like, I'll show you with the transistor legs too. So what I'm going to do with these transistors is, rather than trying to desolder each one of these, I'm going to just snip off the legs and then I can get the legs out. So this is a safer method of removing a component, so I know I'm not saving these, so it's much safer to just snip off the transistor, and then I'll show you. So you want to get the legs so they're bent, so they're perpendicular to the board, and then I'll turn it over on the back side. And then I'm going to add some solder to the legs. This one's on the ground plane, so it takes some more heat. Then you just drop it like that. And there you can see the leg is now out. So I didn't need to get the soldering iron out. So that's, now I'll just do that to all three, and then I can take the desoldering gun and clear out the holes. It's a lot safer for the solder pad that way. Here you see, I got all three of them out now. So what I'll do is I'm just going to add some fresh solder to that, and then I can use the solder sucker to get it out the rest of the way. There you go, nice and cleaned out, no damage to the solder pads. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to do that for every single one of these. Just snip the legs and then I just tap them onto the table and pull them out. Now I'll just add a little bit of solder to each one, and then I can suck out the solder holes. Alright, I want to just check my work. Looks like they're all cleaned out. Alright. Now I might as well start with the 0 ohm resistors, or the jumper wires. Let's see. Now again, I take this handy tool and I can kind of gauge what size I'm going to need. So somewhere around 25 Let's see what that looks like. Again, you don't have to do this. This is just makes it look a little nicer once they're in. Yep, that's about right. It's 25, so I'll just bend all those. And in fact, I can just put a little tool or something underneath the edge of the board here, maybe. There. And I can just lock it in from the top side, and I can finish it off from the bottom. Just tack it. Oh, I didn't realize this has two size channels. So there's a smaller channel and a larger channel for this tool. So the smaller one holds the component in place a little easier, so I get it centered up. Alright, on to the transistors. I just put these in place. Hopefully I can flip this thing over and keep them all in the same spot, but we'll see.
Well, it didn't quite work, but I got most of them. So I think what I'll do is I will tack one of the legs and then I can push them up. Now for each one of these, I'll just heat up that one leg that I tacked, and then I'll push it through the rest of the way from the other side. Alright, now I can solder all the rest of the legs. Alright, now I just can clip the legs. Now take a little bit of alcohol and a toothbrush, clean up all the flux left behind. now if I want to double check that my solder work is good, I can put my multimeter onto continuity, and then you can just check the legs, make sure that I don't have anything bridged. Alright, I should have continuity across because these are just jumpers here. Alright, so there we go. That is that alternative mod that you can do or upgrade to the board using these IRF 9Z34N MOSFETs, and so this area of the board is going to run a lot cooler. So with that, these two boards are pretty well bulletproofed. So next step is I'm going to take them back to the game and pop them back in.